Hello and welcome to this most wonderful time of the year. The Advent of Code is here. If you don't know what is Advent of Code, it's an advent calendar of small programming challenges that open up every day for 12 days in December. The point of this advent calendar is to have fun solving different riddles that you would not encounter in every day using your programming skills. And this is a great opportunity to also try different programming languages to solve these challenges. For example, I'm trying Go. If you want to find out more, start with day 1 or watch any previous day if you're interested, but today we are continuing with day 5. As the forklifts break through the wall, the elves are delighted to discover that there was a cafeteria on the other side after all. You can hear a commotion coming from the kitchen. At this rate, we won't have any time left to put the wreaths up in dining hall. Resolute in your quest, you investigate. If only we hadn't switched to the new inventory management system right before Christmas. That's the best time to do that, actually. Another elf exclaims. You ask what's going on. The elves in the kitchen explain the situation. Because of their complicated new inventory management system, they can't figure out which of their ingredients are fresh and which are spoiled. When you ask how it works, they give you a copy of their database, which is your puzzle input. The database operates on ingredient IDs. It consists of lists of fresh ingredient ranges, a blank line, and a list of available ingredient IDs. So for example, this is the range of fresh ingredients, and these are the ingredients that are in the inventory. The fresh ID ranges are inclusive, okay, and ranges can also overlap. An ingredient is fresh if it fits in any of these ranges. So here is an example, and our goal is to process the database file and find out how many ingredients are fresh. I think here we should not really overcomplicate with any solution. It's just a list of ranges, so either it's inside the range or it's not inside the range. We could try to optimize sorting, merging the intervals, but right now we just need to count how many of them are. Of course, it would be 2 nested loops, but I mean, yeah, I think it's not that bad. Let's keep the hard things for the part 2. So let's go over all the ingredients and let's transform it into the integer actually so we can compare it with the ranges. So let's get the ingredient, or let's call it maybe ingredient int. And of course, let's ignore the error, just like good programming practices. So range is separated by the dash, so let's split into parts our string. So split by the dash, and then we are interested in start value, which will be the first part converted to integer, and the end value. Now if ingredient integer is inside this region, then we say that it's fresh, so we will increment fresh. And we want to break from the loop because there are overlapping intervals and we don't want to count them together. So let's define the fresh one and then return here back. I think it's quite straightforward, nothing to overcomplicate here. Okay, let's go to tests. This was the given input, the ranges and the ingredients, and we can expect that there should be 3 fresh ingredients. And let's run this test. And success! So the sample input works as expected. Now let's go for the puzzle input. Test part 1 with the puzzle input, which each of you has different. So let's parse it from file, the puzzle input, but it's just the input. Then let's have the convert it to string. Now we know that there are 2 parts, the ranges and the ingredients, and they're separated by the blank line. So first of all, we need to split it again into parts. So let's split it by 2 new lines. Exception is only that I am on Windows, so I will have this /r character. Okay, so ranges then is the first part. Again, we can split it so we have it on every line, and the ingredients also. Now we define some sort of expected value that you don't know, but I know because I already have solved it. The results. And if the results don't match, we throw an error here. So in my case, it should be 701. So let's run it. And just like that, we have successfully earned our first star of the day. Now let's go to the part 2. That's where things get tricky. The elves start bringing their spoiled inventory to the trash chute at the back of the kitchen. So that they can stop bugging you when you get new inventory, the elves would like to know all of the IDs that the fresh ingredient ID ranges considered to be fresh. An ingredient ID is still considered fresh if it is in any range. So our goal is to find how many ingredient IDs are considered to be fresh according to the fresh ingredient ranges. Basically, we need to take only the ranges without the ingredient IDs and compute how many elements are across all of these intervals. Technically, we could compute each interval's range and sum them, but they are overlapping, so we need to do something about that. So if we look at our sample input, so we had following ranges, right? Let's just have it like an example. So it was from 3 to 5, the first one, then 10, 14, 16, and 20, and 12, and 18. So one range is 12, 18, 16, 20, 10, 14, and 3 and 5. So these are our ranges. And our expected value in this case is 14. So from 3 to 5, it's 5 minus 3 plus 1. It's 3 values here. Then from 10 till 12, it's also 3 values. From 12 to 14, we now do not need to count the 12 again, so it's just 2 values. From 14 till 16, again 2 values, because 14 already been counted in. From 16 till 18, also 2, and same goes here. So in total, it's 8 plus 6, 14. But of course, we cannot just straightforward compute each interval. We need to, of course, find out which one are overlapping. And we could just repeat simply and take one interval and compare it to another, find which are overlapping and merge them. So taking the minimum and the maximum, making one single interval. So, but it will still be 2 nested loops that we need to iterate to compare each other, and one more loop outside, because it could also get to the point that it's overlapping with some previous maybe loop, because we don't know when the interval will come in the sequence. So we should do something better. Okay, looking again at our intervals of 3, 5, 10, 13, 16, 20, 20, 18, we could actually observe one thing. So if we look at our given intervals, and let's think, what are the potential ranges that could be merged? 3 and 5 and 16, 20 probably will not be merged in any time soon. Only closest intervals could be overlapping. If we sort by the starting number here then we could get following picture that actually 2 adjacent intervals can be merged. So these are potential merge candidates. If they are not overlapping, then we are just finding the length and adding into the full sum. But if they are here overlapping, we can then replace those and merge into one larger interval. And then again, potentially it can only merge with the next one. So if it's again overlapping, then we can say, okay, from 10 till 20, and now we have our final number. So here we have 3, 4, 5, it's 3 values. Here we have 10 plus 1, so it's 11 values. The same 13. So here then I will start by defining a structure which will be a range, which has start and end. Then I will have ranges array, which will be with length of how many intervals do we have by default. And I will first map it into these parts and convert it in our range structure. So splitting by the dash, transforming into integers, and putting it into ranges array. And here let's sort our ranges by the starting interval. So we can use slices sort and sort by function. Here we provide that we want to sort ranges and our function of type range, which will return int as it requires a comparator. And we can just return a comparator of compare A start and B start. So this now should sort our intervals in this ascending order. And let's have this fresh ingredient count. And here we now need to go over all of the intervals and see if they could be merged or not. But we need to start with the first one. So let's look at the current range. which would be then the range is 0. And now we want to compare it to all other intervals. So let's start with the next one. And let's compare if they overlap. For that, I will define a function to make things beautiful is overlapping. And we will provide range 1 and range 2. But we need to get our type definition outside the function then. Up like here. If the first end is after second start, it means it overlaps, and the second end is after the first start. Yeah, it makes sense. And also immediately I will create a function merge ranges, and it will just return min and max values of the start and end to build this one single range. Okay, so let's check then. If our current range, that is the previous one actually, is overlapping with these ranges, then we know that we need to merge them. So we will say the current range is the now merged one. But if they do not overlap, then it means it is isolated range, and we can just add the length to this fresh ingredient count and say that the current range now is the next one. Okay, looks optimistic. For this one, we of course made a little less tests, I think, because this problem itself is more straightforward. So let's again take the sample input for our part 2, and the expected value here should be 14. And let's test it. And we have an error, so it doesn't match. So we have implemented something wrongly. And of course, we forgot that at the end, all of these intervals could end up into one single, which will never be merged in the loop. So we need to always add, in addition, the length of the last range. And now running the sample input will yield us the expected result. Okay, now let's go for the puzzle input. So part 2, part 2, part 2, and for me the expected value should be this one. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and success! We have solved part 2, earning our second star of the day. This day as well was quite surprisingly easy and fast with the solutions. Of course, we could have it much prettier. Maybe there could be more optimal solution that we could think of. If you know such, mention that down in the comments. I would gladly hear that. But other than that, I don't think I have much to add here. Go try to solve the next day on your own and then come back to me and let's compare our solutions. If you enjoyed this content, leave a like, smash that subscribe button. I'm almost at 200 subscribers. I would really like to reach this milestone, and your help will be appreciated here. But until that, anyway, keep coding, and I see you next time.